Hello, my name is Heather Bedard, and I have worked in the neonatal intensive care unit at Crouse Hospital for the past 2 years, and I am currently a pediatric nurse practitioner student at Upstate Medical University. Today, I'm going to be presenting a web tour for parents who have children with Trisomy 21. I chose this chronic illness based on my own personal experiences. I spent the majority of my college years working with children with special needs, and I currently PCA for a family with several children, including 2 that have Trisomy 21. So, Trisomy 21 is also known as Down syndrome. It is usually diagnosed in utero, but it is very apparent at birth if not caught. There are facial appearance abnormalities, skeletal abnormalities of the spine, hips, feet, and hands, as well as muscle abnormalities, including low tone. Trisomy 21 is the most common chromosomal anomaly, and it's a genetic condition caused by a third chromosome at position 21. So usually you have 2 sets, 23 chromosomes. These children end up with a third chromosome at position 21, leading to a total number of 47 chromosomes. So the lifetime comorbidities of these children, they often are born with cardiac defects. They'll often face gastrointestinal abnormalities, musculoskeletal and movement difficulties. They can have endocrine disorders and very commonly developmental disabilities. So looking at the lifetime of these children, they can face a lot of cardiac surgeries throughout, looking at the school age and further looking into fostering independence during adolescence. So the purpose of this tour is to highlight the resources that are available to these parents. I chose CHOP because despite its foundation in 1855 as the nation's first hospital devoted specifically to children, there are also a lot of resources on the website that follow up throughout the lifetime, including a large section on fostering independence in adolescence and working on merging that gap when you leave your pediatrician's office and move on into adulthood. So I chose the Trisomy 21 program at CHOP, and this is the website. So anytime we're going to do one of these websites, we're going to present a SEER, which is a Source Educational Evaluation Rubric. I gave them a 4 out of 4. Under the authoritative quality, they're a highly regarded site that's referenced and linked to by others. Information is well referenced, cited, and written by authors with expertise in the content area. The educational value, the site is the leading resource of content that exceeds instructional goals. The intent, the site is highly respected. It's a source of content provided to inform users. The site is the primary source of original content and viewpoints, and the site content is high quality, and enough content is provided to establish good coverage. So not only is this website presented by highly educated staff that are specializing in Trisomy 21, there are also a ton of resources that go above and beyond the basic care of a child, and there are also links to outside resources and sites as well. So we are going to go to the website. So this is the homepage when you search on the CHOP website for Trisomy 21 chronic illness. Your homepage, as discussed earlier, discusses the lifelong comorbidities referenced here. And we also have a brief section on what causes Trisomy 21, and then going forward with your basic signs and symptoms. So all of that is pretty much covered by your pediatrician or your obstetrician, depending on diagnosis time. This discusses the initial testing and diagnosis, and then the treatments. So what we're going to focus on here is mostly our follow-up care, which is how I was explaining earlier that we're really fostering independence in adolescence and adulthood, and the CHOP website does a really good job at going above and beyond your basic pediatric time. There's also a section at the bottom here that discusses the specialist that your child might have to see based on the comorbidities. This is just kind of a good source for parents to know who to see for what, when to see them. Your pediatrician will give you better guidance, but it's just a frame of reference. And here, I think this is a very important part for parents facing a new diagnosis of having a child with Down syndrome, that, you know, the life expectancy used to be so small, but today it's not that short of the normal. So these are our providers that if you would go to CHOP, you will see. Other parts of this website that are useful, if you scroll up here, the patient story section goes through several cases discussing the child's diagnosis, the specific complications that child and that family faced, and it really gives a sense of camaraderie amongst parents. It gives them a resource, it gives them a lifeline, it gives them the sense that they are not alone. So back up to the top, we're going to skip resources for now, and we're going to go on to research. This section discusses, current Trisomy 21 research at CHOP. If you were to be bringing your child here or considering bringing your child here, this is a good section to see what research studies they're doing, what advances they're doing, but also if you're at an outlying hospital to see if maybe those are available to you. The events section, so this discusses the Buddy Walk and Family Fun Day. If you don't live in Philadelphia, that is fine. The Buddy Walk is put on by almost every major city. And now we're going to go to the resources tab. So this is the main focus of my web tour today. As a pediatric nurse practitioner, I'm going to skip the insurance and finance, the transition tips for young adults, although this is very useful for those of you with children of this age. And I'm going to go down to the safety section. So what I found very important were these two articles here on preventing abuse of your special needs child, as well as protecting your special needs child from bullying. So we're going to first go to the preventing abuse one. As I stated earlier, these children often have developmental disabilities, and unfortunately in this day and age, it leaves them at risk to abuse. So this goes through discussing, not only what you need to do in terms of you need to know who's working with your child, but it also goes forward with logistics. As I stated earlier, I'm a PCA, so I go into someone's house and I babysit their children. I am hired privately. I do not do it through a company. It's just the fact that I have a little extra knowledge on children with special needs, and that makes me a little more marketable for them. But this can also go towards therapists. You can have specific occupational therapists or speech therapists or early intervention that's coming into your house that you have hired privately that you need to know who they are, what they're going to be doing. Criminal history is a major thing. Thorough background checks should have been done if they're coming from a reputable institution, which in terms of your major therapists, you're most likely going to be getting through your doctor, and they will be reputable. But the major thing here is for your caregivers that you're, on your websites, on Google, on Facebook, looking for people to watch your children. In terms of education for your child, children with special needs are are open to abuse, and that abuse can come in every form of physical, emotional, mental, and sexual, and these need to be discussed with your child, especially if they are spending a lot of time one-on-one with adults. In terms of making this age appropriate, there's no need to discuss the total ins and outs of what could happen with your small child, but just discussing, your good and your bad touches and when to recognize what's bad. I liked this part here of the no secrets policy at home, creating a comfortable and supportive environment to your child to communicate openly, especially with your older children, depending on who they are spending their time with, who they're surrounding themselves with. This is very important. Observing signs of abuse. Children with special needs often have decreased proprioception and are more likely to come home with bumps and bruises. Just recognizing when this can be indicative of something more than just their norm. You know your children best. Watch for behavior changes, and this is going to be a little tricky once you start hitting your developmental milestones. When your adolescent gets a little moody, why are they getting a little moody? But just trust your gut, and when it comes, if you need to, if you're concerned, you can always talk to your primary care physician. So this goes on about advocacy and working with your child. Here are a few additional resources in terms of watching your children, and these two specifically are about abuse. So we are going to go back up to resources, and we're going to scroll back down to our safety section, and now we're going to discuss bullying, which is another issue that most children face, but unfortunately our children with special needs are at a higher risk of facing. So again, bullying can involve many different, can take on many different forms. It can be an actual physical act. It can simply be verbal intimidation. It can be a social attack through rumors, manipulation, or embarrassment, or it can also be cyberbullying, which has become a huge issue in this day and age with our newer generations. This discusses our statistics of bullying and how we can prevent that, or also just kind of combat it by pursuing their interests and hobbies, building their confidence, and protecting them. I'm not saying you're going to be able to protect your child from bullying. Every child is most likely going to encounter some form of bullying at some point in their lives. We just want to make sure our children have the best tool belt possible. This kind of goes back with our no secrets policy at home that we discussed with abuse. Leaving that communication line with your child open is crucial. We also want to provide support. Children at any age, developmental ability, are likely to shy away if they feel judgment. They should not feel that this is their fault. They should not feel that they are to blame, and they should not feel embarrassed or feel as though you are going to retaliate against them. In terms of retaliation, you should also never advise your child to retaliate back in any way. And you yourself should not confront the bully or their family. This gets a little tricky when it comes to your small classrooms of just your special needs children. Those families are often very close. So saying, hey, your Robbie has been very mean to my Abby seems like a very good thing and a very easy way to approach the situation. But depending on your child, that may not go over well. This discusses our children's rights. The Disability Harassment, the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990 and the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. As parents of children with special needs, you should be very well versed in. Just in terms of, you may have to advocate for your child at some point, and you do want to know legally what your rights are. Disability harassment here is defined as conduct that creates a hostile environment that limits a person with a disability from participating in or benefit from school activities or services. This is often not done intentionally by your teachers and your administrations. It's more likely perpetrated by your peers in a bullying perspective. Anytime you feel as though your child is being bullied, this needs to be written and documented to the child's teacher or principal. Your paper trails, so to speak, are very important. IEPs are a good way to kind of discuss this head-on attack, in the sense of building social skills, developing positive interpersonal relationships, and developing self-advocacy skills. You can include these in your child's IEP so that they're set up in a way that they're less likely to crumble in the space of bullying. Again, here, CHOP is big on advocacy, so this is their section on advocating for school-based bullying prevention programs. Here are 2 additional resources specifically for bullying. So here we're just going to kind of do a brief little overview of keeping your special needs child safe. So this is your overall sense of, what your child is likely to face, how you can go through with your safety proofing. But it also discusses needs for specialized safety training. In terms of today, we discussed bullying and abuse, which is more so parent-driven, but can also be included in the IEP through self-esteem and self-advocacy. But sometimes you're going to have safety issues that require specialized training. Here we go through kind of embracing the help of your community, creating a family safety plan, teaching safety language. This is key, especially with abuse and bullying. Teaching your child to call for emergency services and becoming familiar with community programs. So we are now going to go back up here to resources. So the key part of why I chose CHOP's website is that not only does it go through this kind of step-by-step jumping and figuring out what you might be facing with your life in terms of insurance and financial difficulties, difficulty transitioning your child to young adulthood, difficulty creating a safe environment for your child, but it also has this part here of websites. So these are your overarching websites, including a few specific to states that are gonna be amazing websites, including the Early Intervention Agency, Down syndrome. This focuses on the health issues. This is your Down Syndrome Research Foundation, which investigates best practice and initiates and participates in research studies. This is a little more geared to your in utero diagnoses with Down syndrome and pregnancy, but also our community resource database. As a parent with a child with special needs, whether it's Trisomy 21, autism, any sort of developmental delay, you're not alone. And I think a huge thing here is to remember that. So in conclusion, bring your concerns to your team, face your life head on and discuss with your child any way you can that keeps them safe. Thank you and have a good day.